Good morning, everyone. Today is Tuesday, the 13th of Nisan. Today we're finishing up the Yevamos. It's the last Perek of Yevamos today, and tomorrow at Yanta we're starting Kesubos. Very awesome. Today's shiur is leading us to the Torah Shemos and the steps of the Torah and the Yosef, and Hashem will have an aliyah. And Yisrael Baruch Aleah, Rachel Spasal. The refuah shlema to Yisrael Baruch Aleah, Rachel Spasal Zelda, Avi Yisrael Barisha, Chayim Babela, refuah shlema B'Sol Shechal Yisrael, and a schut and a sefer bracha v'atzlacha to Yeshua ben Gittel and all his endeavors. And again, special shout out to our good friends at the Imperial Advisory Group for sponsoring Seder Nashim. They are experts, fractional CFOs. If you need help with your company's businesses with fractional CFO stuff, please reach out to them directly at imperialgrp.com. Okay, here we go. The last Perek. Tezayin Mishnah Aleph. For woman's childless husband and her co-wife went overseas, and her husband had a brother. Witnesses came and told her, your husband died. Lo Sinasa, she may not be married because she might be subject to Yibum since her husband had no children, no known children. Lo Tisyamim Asheteda Shema Milberesi Sarasa. However, she may not perform Yibum until she finds out whether her co-wife is pregnant. Because if the co-wife is pregnant and has a child, then both wives are patur from Yibum. If the co-wife doesn't have a child and she's not pregnant, then they are both subject to Yibum. If she had a mother-in-law who was overseas, she does not have to be concerned that her mother-in-law had a son and she is bound to him for Yibum. That's not necessary. You got Sasa Malaya Choshesh. So if the mother-in-law went overseas while she was pregnant, then the daughter-in-law must be concerned that her mother-in-law had a son and may not remarry until she verifies the situation. Maybe Yeshua Omer Ena Choshesh. But Yeshua says that even in this case, she does not have to be concerned that her mother-in-law had a son and she may marry right away. Mishnah Beis. Stay Yevamos, two sister-in-laws came from overseas. Zua Maris Mace Bali. This one says my husband died childless. Zua Maris Mace Bali. And this one says my husband died childless. Zu Asur and Balish. So Zu, this one is usher to remarry because she might be bound to the husband of that one for Yibum. Zu Asur Mivnei and that one is usher to remarry because she might be bound to the husband of this one for Yibum. Each one might be bound because of the other one. So therefore, they can't. Neither one of them is free to remarry. Lazu Adam, Lazu Ain Adam. This one has witnesses that her husband died, and this one the other one has no witnesses. Her husband died. The one who has witnesses is also to remarry. Because even though there are witnesses that her husband died, there are no witnesses that her Yavam died. She therefore is bound to Yibum. But the one who has no witnesses is mutter to remarry because there are witnesses that her Yavam died. This one has children and that one has no children. The one who has children is allowed to remarry because she is not subject to Yibum since she has children. The one who has no children is also to remarry because she's chayiv to Yibum, and she must suspect that her Yibum is still alive. Next case, this Yabum, both women underwent Yibum to the other brothers of their husbands, but Mesu Hayivamin, and their Yavums who are now the husbands later died childless. These women are asked to marry because the original problem returns. Now now they have to be suspect that the original husband's still alive, and she's not bound to him for Yibam. Just the death of his second husband. To Yibam on top of Yibam. If that's the Rambam Eliezer says, how will the Huchu the Yivam? Since they were permitted to marry and actually married the second husbands, that shows that the original husbands are in fact dead. Huchu the Adam. Therefore, if the Yavam dies childless, according to Rabbi Lezer, they are they're allowed to marry anyone they want. They don't have to do Yibum a second time. Mishnah Gimel, Ein Ma'idin Ella al parts of Panim Imachotim. Witnesses cannot testify to the identity of a corpse unless they recognize it based on the form of the face, meaning the both cheeks and the forehead, with the nose. If they do not see the face, the cheeks, or the cheeks, forehead, or nose is not intact, they cannot be sure of the identity of the corpse. Even if there are identifying marks on its body or clothes. So unless witnesses testify that they recognize the man's corpse based on the face and nose, that man's wife may not remarry. They cannot testify that a man is dead unless they saw that his soul had left his body, that he had actually died. But I feel a rule itself, but even if they saw that he was severely cut by a sword or hanging from a gallows, or that a wild beast was eating him, if they did not see him die, his wife may not remarry because it's possible that somehow he was saved. So, Ema Eden Ella Ashlosha Chadat. Ella Ema Eden Ella Ashlosha Yavim. You cannot testify about the identity of a corpse unless they saw it within 3 days of death. After 3 days, the body starts to decompose and its appearance changes so much that they cannot be sure of its identity. Maybe Huda ben Bava. Remember, Huda ben Bava says, "Lo kol adam, lo kol makom, lo kol shows shown." Not all men, nor all places, nor all times are like in this matter, since mason decompose at different rates depending on many factors. No set time can be established. Mishnah Daled, you got to take it on a case by case basis. Mishnah Daled. If a man fell into a body of water was not seen to come out, so whether the body water has visible shores, like like a pond or a lake, whatever. Bain himself, or it does not have any visible shores. I mean, like a sea or a river or an ocean, which goes on for hundreds of thousands of miles. Ishto Asura, the man's wife is also to be married because it's possible that he's still alive. Excuse me. If the shoreline is not visible, it is possible that he may have gone out of the water somewhere else. And it's possible he's still alive. Rabbi Meir said, it happened that a person fell into a large pit full of water, and emerged alive after 3 days. It is possible. So that shows that you have to suspect that he might still be alive. Yossi says, there's an incident where a blind man went to immerse himself in a pool of water in a cave whose shore was visible. And this guy went after him. And they both stayed in the water long enough for their souls to depart, even though their bodies were never found. The shiur in the Shesayim, the Chachamim allowed the wives to remarry. When a person falls into water whose shores are visible, if he's not seen to emerge within the time that person can normally survive underwater, he's presumed to have drowned. They do not suspect that somehow he remained alive. The Shuv Ma'aseh Ba'asya. There was another incident that happened in Asya. The Echesh is Shilshu Shilshu Shluhu. Yeah, it's a good word. Where the person who was lowered into the sea on a rope when they tried to bring him out, below Allah biyadam Allah rakla, and they only recovered his leg. Amr Chacham, they said the Chacham said, man, ha'aku with a malatinasi. If the leg was cut off above the knee, the man's wife may remarry because he could not have survived such a wound. Minha, what? Um, because that's such a serious wound that he's considered to be a treifa, and a person cannot survive past more than 12 months. Um, so that they recovered the leg that's cut off above the knee, and the man's wife can remarry after 12 months have passed. Because even if he managed to come out of the water, he would have died from his wound within 12 months. By 12 months. But if the leg was cut below the knee, she may not remarry because he could have survived the wound, and he might have emerged from the water out of sight and could still be there. Mishnah Hey. I feel even if a woman, even if a person heard women saying so and so died, that's enough evidence for him to testify that the man is dead. Even though the women were simply talking casually and did not intend to testify, he may testify in court that the man is dead based on the conversation. The court will permit the dead man's wife to marry. Rabbi Yehuda says, "Afilu shalom and atinokos omen hare anu hoch nispo likbor es ishponi." Even if a person has heard children saying, "We're going home after hearing they spayed them and buried so and so." So you can testify that the man is dead based on the conversation. This is because we accept the testimony that a man died whether the person saying that he died intends for those words to serve as testimony. Whether he does not intend for his words to serve as testimony, it simply mentions the man's death by way of conversation. Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava says, Yisrael af al pi shehu miskabel. When a Jew says that someone died, his statement can be used as evidence even when he intended to testify about the man's death. Rabbi Goy, im haya miskabel ein edus edus. When an idolater says that someone died, if he intended to testify about the man's death, his edus is possible. As he is suspected of lying deliberately. However, an idolater is believed if he simply mentioned the man's death by way of conversation, but did not intend to testify, because in that case, it can be assumed that he's telling the truth. Mishnah Vav, Me'idin the or Haner or Levana. Witnesses can testify that the man is dead and thereby allow his wife to remarry, even if they only identify his corpse by lamplight or by moonlight. Masian al P. Basco. We can also allow a woman to marry based on a voice that proclaims that her husband is dead, even if we don't know whose voice it is. So loud dafka, we're talking about a divine voice, which is commonly known as a basco, but rather a human voice that we just don't know where it's coming from. Maybe like the voice is far away, but it's definitely human and not a divine message. Ahmad Rosh Har. There was an incident with a person who stood on a mountaintop. And said so and so from such and such a place has died. People went to the mountaintop, did not find anyone there. They see us east, nevertheless, the Chachamim allowed the man's wife to remarry based on that declaration. Sure, Salmon. There's another incident that happened in Salmon. With a person who was heard saying, so and so, the son of so and so, has been bitten by a snake and I am dying. People went to the place his voice came from and found a dead man, but they did not recognize the body. Nevertheless, the Chachamim allowed that man's wife to be married based on the declaration. Since the corpse is not identified, the wife is allowed to be married solely based on the voice that was heard. And the last Mishnah of Yevamos, it's a long one. It's been 16 days already, and we're moving along. Wow. Amar Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva said, "Kishirati the Nada the Aber Shana." When I went down from Eretz Yisrael to Nehardia, this was the city in Buffalo, to establish the Ibiyur, the leap year. Masasi Nechemia Ish based Li. I met Nechemia based Li. Amar said to me, "Shemati Shem Esinas Ish of Eretz Yisrael Al Pi Erecha." I heard that none of the rabbis in Eretz Yisrael allow a woman to be married on the edus of a single witness that her husband died. Except for Yehuda ben Bava, who is the only one who relies on such edus. Binomesi lo kenatwa. I said to Nehemiah, that statement is correct. Amar li, amar lahem mishmi. He said to me, tell the rabbis in Eretz Yisrael my name. Atem yodim shemedina mishubeshes b'gaisus. You know that the roads in this country are in turmoil because of threatening troops, and therefore I cannot go to Eretz Yisrael myself. However, I wish to pass on the Masorah that I received from Gamliel the elder, Shemasian as Isha al Pi Erecha, that we allow a woman to be married based on the edus of a single witness. Rabbi Akiva continued, when I came back to Israel, I presented Nehemiah's words to before Rabbi Gamliel, who is Rabbi Gamliel, the elder's grandson. He rejoiced at my words. And said, we have now found a companion who agrees with Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava, namely Rabbi Gamliel the elder, and who we can now allow women to remarry more easily. While discussing this matter, Rabbi Gamliel remembered an incident. Shenarago Harugim Betel Arza, that once men had been killed in Tel Arza, he see Rabbi Gamliel Hazakin Shusayim Al Pi Eit Echad. Rabbi Gamliel the elder had allowed their wives to remarry based on the word of a single witness, just as Nehemiah had related. As a result of receiving the tradition, it became established for all the Chachamim to allow women to remarry based on a single witness. In addition, it later became established to allow women to remarry based on a witness relating edus that he had heard from another witness. And based on edus given by a Kanani, a woman, or a Shifra Kananis. Rabbi Eliezer say, we don't allow a woman to remarry based on a single witness. Rabbi Akiva says, lo al pi isha, a wife may not remarry based on edus of a woman. Lo al pi eved, lo al pi shifcha, nor based on a Eved Kanani, nor on the edus of a Shifra Kananis. Lo al pi krovim, nor based on the wives' relatives. How can you say that a wife may not remarry based on a wife's testimony? There was an incident with Levium who traveled to Tzawar, the city of Depam, and one of them became sick along the way. And they brought him to an inn. They continued to serve without him. And on their return, they said to the woman innkeeper, where is our friend? Amalehem meis ukvartiv. She told him he died and I buried him. If you see it as ishto, and based on her words, the Chacham allowed that man's wife to remarry. Amalel, the Chacham said to Rekiva, Allah to hey Kohenes b'fundakis. Should the Kohenes or other Jewish women of distinguished lineage not be considered as reliable as this idolatrous female innkeeper? If the innkeeper is believed to allow a man's wife to remarry, should we not accept the aiders of a Jewish woman in order to allow a woman to remarry? Maybe Amlahem respond to them because the hey pundakas nemenes, when the innkeeper will be believed, then Jewish women will also be believed. In other words, had the innkeeper been believed, you would have had a valid argument. However, the innkeeper was in fact not believed on her word alone. Hapudakis Rather, the innkeeper brought out to them the dead man's staff and pouch and the Torah scroll that had been in his possession. And these items served as proof that their friend had truly died and confirms her words. However, her word or that of any other woman cannot be believed on its own. Hajjan Alach, Yevamos, and we will continue tomorrow with Ksubos on Erev Pesach. A wonderful day.